let me just share that. Awesome, great. Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I say that I actually met Jill in one of my previous roles here at the Department of Health when I worked in lead poisoning prevention. And actually, I worked with her on every program that I've worked in, including this one. So I think that, you know, everything we do in public health extends to the rural community. And so I'm really, you know, appreciative of this chance to talk a little bit more about my current role. But you know, I think everything I've done is touch this community at some point or another. And, you know, we have to always make sure that we, you know, customize our approaches to each community we're working with. So Jill's a fantastic asset here at the Department of Health, and all of us really work with her and in our somewhat smaller rural areas than I would think in most of the other states that we're talking to today. So again, my name's Travis Vendetti, and so I'm working right now, and I am actively engaged in the COVID response. I think most of us are still, you know, obviously doing ongoing work with the Department of, with your departments of health or whoever you're working with, and specifically around the vaccination campaign. But today I want to talk just more generally about emergency preparedness and some systems and various things we do in Rhode Island that may be of use when you're thinking about things you can be doing in your own state. So, and I'm sure some of you probably already have similar systems or programs. So hopefully we can chat a little bit. And it's going to be informal. So if anybody has any questions or anything like that, please feel free to stop me. You know, unmute yourself. I'm very easy. So don't worry about interrupting or anything like that. Just stop me. And I am a New Englander, so I can talk pretty fast. So if I go too pretty quick, please stop me and slow me down. So, so today, the way I decided to structure this is that we normally do trainings out in communities where we talk about emergency preparedness and actually talk to individuals and encourage them to do emergency preparedness. So I want to actually show you a lot of slides from our training, then kind of talk about how we would use this to help prepare communities and individuals and some of the methods and techniques we use and our staff use. It's actually not normally me doing these trainings, it's some of my wonderful colleagues here in the Center for Emergency Preparedness and Response. So I want to talk a little bit more about that and how we engage people on the importance of emergency preparedness, go through some of the basic emergency planning concepts, talk about some emergency supply kits, and then I want to reference some of the different systems we have in Rhode Island that support emergency preparedness, especially those in the more rural areas of the state. And then we'll talk a little bit more, because I know this is just obviously the hot topic right now, about COVID-19 and how preparedness can it relates to the current pandemic and how it's actually our preparedness programs have assisted us here in Rhode Island. Now, disclaimer, I'm talking to a lot of different states, I assume. Rhode Island is unique. It's probably goes without saying, we're smaller than some ranches, I believe. I thought I heard Oregon or someone else speaking at some point. I'm pretty sure Rhode Island's actually smaller than some private land ownership in some of the other states. So we are, you know, I want you to obviously take everything I'm talking about with a grain of salt. We only have one single, you know, obviously some of the programs we do are not going to be feasible in other states. We have one single statewide health department. There are no local or county health departments in the state. It's just us. We are able to have a close relationship directly with the State Department of Health and each of the 39 municipalities in the state. Ask how fit 39 municipalities in this tiny state, we just to really cram them in here. And to note, we actually only really have one federally recognized rural health area, which is actually an island off the coast. It's about 11 miles off the coast in the Atlantic. It's called Block Island. The formal name is New Shoreham. However, we do have some state definitions that you know, show some areas where they are considered rural despite not meeting the federal requirements. So they do suffer, and Jill can speak more intelligently to all these different areas on what the you know, kind of things characteristics that they exhibit of the rural communities. So just want to give that as a backdrop to what I'm going to be talking about so you can keep that in the back of your mind. All right, so let's take a look at, we're actually going to just jump right into what we would be doing if I was talking to a group of people and talking about emergency preparedness. So I'll kind of do it a little meta style where I show you the presentation and talk a little bit about how we would be doing this. So This is slides from our course we call Personal Preparedness 101, and you're going to see a lot of pictures and, because again, we're talking to the general public, so we want to really engage people. We want to speak to them. We make, an effort to include different schools. In Rhode Island, we have a pretty diverse population, so we are always trying to make sure that we're being very inclusive with all the pictures and media that we're using so that we're connecting with people and making sure that the material is relevant to them. So we call this course Personal Preparedness 101, and it's a pretty straightforward basic course that we use when we're going out to a community or talking to a specific group on emergency preparedness. Now, one of the things you first need to do is that, it's very easy to talk about preparedness, but it's harder to get people to really take action on that and to make them connect and engage with it. So the first thing we usually start doing is to say, hey, when you're thinking about emergency preparedness and you're like, can you think about who depends on you? Who's the persons that would be relying on you during a crisis or during an emergency? Obviously, parents, it's very easy for them to think about their children or for other people, for their relatives, but it's beyond that. It's also talking about people, your neighbors, your family, nearby, your friends, anyone there who you think would be looking to you or to, or relying on each other during an emergency. And we usually start talking about some common situations, and the fact that they can really happen every day. It doesn't have to take a pandemic for an emergency to be happening. What if your car was stuck on the side of the road during the winter? And maybe you don't have enough cell phone battery to call for help. Do you have a kit in your car? Do you have something that you can rely on in that kind of emergency? What if there was, you were at home during a power outage for multiple days? So, even a small scale problem can quickly, ramp up to become a really big issue for individuals and really even cause harm to life. So we take this time, at the beginning of these trainings to really connect with people and try to make it feel like, it's important for them to consider all of the things that could happen to them that would be better if they were prepared and had taken those additional steps to make sure that they have all the supplies or plans in place that they need to support those themselves and those around them. And then the next thing we try to do is just go into a very simple, obviously, I actually, my degree is actually in health behavior science and working on behavior changes. Obviously, it's difficult, right, to get people to change behaviors. I'm talking to public health people, so everyone knows how difficult tobacco cessation, alcohol, all these different things, getting people to change behaviors is difficult. So we try to make it simple, and we sum it up in these 3 steps. And it's really about, being overall prepared, thinking of the different situations, making a kit to fit those situations, and then, at the same time, staying informed and connected to what's going on around them. So these are the real 3 main points we hammer home in our trainings with individuals to make sure that we at least leave them with those core concepts when they leave the training. So the first thing, obviously, is, being prepared and making a plan. So one of the first things we talk about is thinking about people's personal support network. So a personal support network can include friends, roommates, family members, relatives, coworkers, neighbors, anyone who would check in with you during an emergency to ensure you're okay or help you if needed. So, someone is elderly, they should know that they have relatives in the area or neighbors in the area that would be willing to help them. In Rhode Island, we've had some severe snowstorms in the past, and you might have people who are unable to leave the home because they're snowed in, or if they have a power outage or are not able to get water. Knowing who around them can be called upon in an emergency is a great first step in getting them there. Now, the other thing you need to know your personal network should know is things that you need, so making any special considerations you may have, so thinking about your own personal situation and any medical equipment you might need, and trying to get a list of these people who you can, rely upon in an emergency, or at least, work with and call upon when things, even if it's a minor emergency that's really just affecting you and your household. So a really good thing to do. The next thing we ask people to do is do a personal assessment. So they think about, to think about all the different factors of your daily life that could be affected by an emergency, so you can start planning on how to adapt to them. Deciding what you might be able to do for yourself versus what you might need help doing. you know, it's important to really consider all of these different needs when you're thinking about what do I need in terms of support, or and what can I even offer to others, right? You know, maybe you are the strong person in your family or community that can be a go-to. So it really differs on the individual basis, and you should really share this assessment ideally with your personal support network to let them know that, hey, I'm available, or hey, I need this assistance if something goes wrong. You know, as we're approaching winter months, or in Rhode Island, we're moving into hurricane season where we might have power outages or various different things that could affect it. It'd be good to work with your personal support network to be aware and prepared. Communication sheet, so developing a list of phone numbers. I think all of us understand at this point we rely on this device to really keep all of our contact information. What if this runs out of battery? What if you have, you have to use someone else's phone, or to contact your individual. So getting a communication sheet with all the correct phone numbers, and make sure that you and your loved ones, or your, you know, anybody who's part of that personal support network has this communication sheet and knows how to communicate with each other during an emergency. Really important. And a rally point. You know, a rally point is simply a safe place close to home where your family or your group can meet up if you can't be safely in your home. So it could be church around the corner, grocery store down the street, anywhere. Just making sure that you and your loved ones have a safe place that it's agreed if there is an emergency, you know, you will meet up there and you know, as soon as possible. So just some basic concepts we start talking with people during the training. Now, ensuring that you have all of your medical information available in your, you know, your emergency plan. Having anything that's, you know, relevant to someone who might be providing you medical care, really important to have. We're lucky in Rhode Island that, you know, we have a statewide system that, you know, allows providers to access medical records if people enroll in it. It's called Current Care. That being said, it relies on the internet, it relies on power, it relies on electronics. So if you're in an emergency situation and you're being provided emergency medical care, it's going to be good to know, for that person who's treating you, to know any allergies or sensitivities, or any medications you're on, or conditions that may be important for that person to know. So encouraging people to take the steps of writing it down and making sure they have that all in one place, really important. Doing it during an emergency and then trying to communicate people while your emotions are high and tensions are high and adrenaline's pumping through your system, not the great time to start writing down all of your details, right? So doing that ahead of time can make a big difference when it comes time to actually receiving care. Keep moving on. So communications plan. So, you know, it's important. We encourage everyone to make a communications plan, and there's some you know what I mean, how many people know who would they be calling exactly in the case of an emergency? So that it actually, you have the phone number ready and handy available for you, because it's pretty possible that you and your loved ones might not be together when a disaster hits. So it's good to have that communications plan ready to go that can help you all connect. It's actually something we tell, and I don't know if everyone's aware, it's funny, I don't know if you know this, but it's actually easier sometimes to reach a phone number outside the affected area in a disaster rather than call someone right down the street. So if you're suffering from, say, in our case, a hurricane, it actually might be easier for someone in Rhode Island to call someone in Texas because of various things going on within Rhode Island than call someone right down the street from them. So oftentimes emergency local officials will actually shut down telephone lines so that calls are blocked that are coming into the state in order for people from Rhode Island to call the local emergency officials. So it's really actually important to establish an out-of-state contact, such as a friend or a relative, who can be a main contact or anyone who wants to check in on your status. So if you had a relative in Texas, I happen to have sisters in Colorado, so they would be my point of contact for me and my father, who actually live in the same state. So if there's a disaster going on that's affecting our ability to communicate, there's actually a better chance that I'm going to be able to pick up the phone and call my sisters in Colorado, who my dad can call as well, and we can actually communicate, you know, through them, right? Saying, hey, Travis is okay. He's in this shelter down the street. Your dad's okay. He's in this shelter on the other side, you know, down on this other street. So really important to have that designated contact. Ideally, if they can be out of state or a little ways away from you, that probably actually increase your ability to communicate with them. So we let people know about this as well, and again, encourage them to set up that designated point of contact for emergencies. And when your concerned family and friends are trying to find you or find out what's going on with you, instead of calling emergency officials like us, who are probably running around doing a lot of different work and don't have the time or the ability to go check in on each person, they will be able to check in on you by knowing that contact person who can get in contact with them. So it helps your friends and family to have that peace of mind, and obviously not be tying up phone lines or resources trying to figure out what's going on with one individual, when it could be solved by just checking in with their designated point of contact. So an important concept that we really try to stress during the training. Now, arrow there. So what, making a kit, what are the things you need in an emergency? I think all of us know, basic things you might need: food, water, maybe flashlights, a battery for your cell phone so you can keep contacting people. Having a first aid kit ready available. So basically there's so many different emergency lists. We have some pre-made lists that suggest what, and we'd be handing these out during the training saying, hey, here's a pre-filled list. You can look at it. We give people some of the basic stuff. We give them a flashlight, maybe the whistle, so they can signal people, some basic things. And then we encourage them to take the time and fill out the rest of the items on the list. So it could be information list, like all that medical information we talked about earlier, flashlight, water, extra medication you might need, any copies of your prescriptions, extra pair of glasses for people who use glasses, and you never know, that falls off and breaks. Now you've got no backup. Good idea to have an extra pair. Next time you buy a new pair of glasses, you put that old one in your emergency kit. Sanitary pads or any hygienic materials you might need. Again, we want to keep people to, in an emergency, to still stay hygienic, and, so toothbrush, things like that. For my oral health days, obviously putting the plug in there. So yeah, having anything you might need. So, and everyone's, again, individual. So some people might need some additional medications or other supplies that others might not need. For some individuals who are relying on things like oxygen or others, they might need even storing extra canister, extra supplies or medical equipment that they might need as a backup, extra batteries for equipment, things along those lines. All right. So we kind of have a few different types of kits that we talk about. So we separate them basically into 3 or 4 different categories that we encourage people to have available at all times. And one would be a home disaster kit. So that would be, something you're keeping inside the house, where you could be used to stay at home. So that might be a little bit bigger, right? Because you have more space in your home to store things. Could include things like food, some water that you refill regularly or refresh regularly, so you're not just keeping stagnant water down there, extra batteries, things like that in your home. Whereas something different might be a go bag or an evacuation. So if you're being evacuated from your home, what would you want to be able to easily take with you? And so that would be a separate kit, whereas home disaster would be more if I'm staying inside my home and I'm being bound in home, like many of us have been over the past year. Then a car kit, I referenced, when you get stuck in a car, you are mobile. So having an emergency kit in your car that's designated to stay in your car at all times in case you are in your car and you become stranded, that's another fantastic kit to have ready to go. And lastly, as I mentioned in my bio, I'm a proud pet owner. And so having a kit for my dog. My dog actually has some medications that I would want to make sure that I have, and I do have a separate supply for him in a kit. And, anything else, maybe they do make, if I'm going to speak specific to dogs, but for cat owners, anyone else, maybe it's a first aid kit designed for them, food, things that you need to keep them safe and healthy too. We know that pets and companions can be really great for mental health, especially in traumatic situations or, high stress situations. So we encourage people to think about that as well. What would you want for that important part of your life as well? And leading up to, and we encourage people to really take the time to think about this stuff now. Blue sky, sunny days. Rhode Island's a very, very sunny day, very hot here right now. But we encourage people to think about it now, because I think everyone's seen the news when we lead up to a storm, the lines at grocery stores, people running in and buying all of the milk off shelves. In Rhode Island, it's strange. Every time we have a storm, everyone buys all the milk. I'm not quite sure why milk is the most popular thing, but it is. So having any of that stuff that you want, you might not be able to get it in the days leading up. So you might know something's coming, but the ability to access it might be limited at that time because everyone's running to go get it, right? So taking that extra time to make sure that you're purchasing it when it is calm times will help you when it actually comes to the time of the emergency. So, and we also encourage people not to say, oh, they got to go buy all this out at once. You know, money is an issue, right? So maybe it's working on your home disaster kit first and buying some supplies over time, then working on your evacuation kit. You know, so buying small pieces over time, it's much more manageable if you buy one thing a month or one thing, you know, every couple of weeks, and then slowly building it up over time. So best thing again is having that list of what you're gonna get, and we do provide them some sample lists for all these type of kits that they can consider. So something to consider, especially I guess you know when we're talking about people in rural areas who might even have less access to go buy all these things in the run up to an emergency or a disaster situation. You know, important to stress that among those communities. Go bag supplies. This is really talking about if we were asking somebody to evacuate their home, maybe due to a natural disaster or something, some impending threat. So making sure that you have everything you might need if you were being relocated to a shelter or evacuated out of your home. So, you know, we really stress to people, we know a lot of people are very, say, hesitant to leave sometimes when ordered to evacuate. So we try to, you know, stress on this that it's so important for them to leave as soon as an evacuation order is issued because it's only going to get more and more difficult to leave. So if you delay that decision, it may be made for you later on as you wait longer and longer, right? Because at a certain point, there may not be the ability to actually evacuate. Emergency shelters don't have everything. We tell them that we do our best, you know, in the emergency preparedness world to have shelters that are stocked with as much things as we can. But however, we can't rely on emergency shelter to have every single thing they need. You know, it might not necessarily have beds. It might not have food available. It really might just be a roof that is in a safe place that is, you know, something where people can shelter from whatever it is we're confronting. So making sure that people bring everything they need to stay comfortable and stay healthy is really important. So thinking about, again, medications, medical equipment, any additional things that they might need to stay comfortable, really important. Cooling and warming centers are a good example of that when we're talking about extreme weather events. They really may just have something, they may just be providing a place with a temperature and they really might not have much else on it. So you might not stay there that long and get relief from whatever you're seeking, whether it's extreme heat or extreme cold, if you don't have the stuff you need to stay comfortable. If you have small kids, games, things to keep them occupied, right? You know, so thinking ahead to all those potential things that you might need if you are being evacuated from an area. So you can see some of the various things here. And then just getting it in an easy transported grab and go bag, really important as well. Now the home disaster supply kit, like I said, it's going to be a little bit bigger because it's going to stay in your home. And we usually say some of the things that we would advise you having: water, obviously extremely important, 1 gallon of water per person per day for at least 3 days for drinking, sanitation, washing, things like that. Food, a 3-day supply of non-perishable food. Having a battery power or hand crank radio or a weather radio with a tone alert. So basically, again, allowing you to stay connected. Battery for your cell phone, right? Again, allowing you to stay connected, notified. Having a flashlight in case of power outages, first aid kit, whistles if you need them to signal for assistance. Having a dust mask to help filter contaminated air, or obviously, I think a lot of us have masks nowadays on hand, so that's just easy. You stick a couple of those right in your into your supply kit. Towelettes to help clean yourself if you don't have running water for a shower or bath or whatever it may be. Garbage bags and plastic ties to make sure you're keeping your waste and refuse away from people. Again, trying to keep things sanitized, hygienic. Having a can opener if you have canned food available. It's great to have the cans of food. You can only open them. kind of defeats the purpose there, right? Local maps, I definitely know that I used to be way better about using maps wherever I was traveling when I was younger, and now I rely again on Google Maps and things to tell me exactly where I'm going. If this goes down, where am I? So having some local maps of the areas is really helpful in terms of helping you navigate potentially around roadblocks or down power lines or whatever it may be that's you need to be able to get in or out of your area. And again, the cell phone with the chargers and a backup battery is one of the best things to have. Staying informed. So this is where we're going to start talking about some of the systems in Rhode Island that we encourage people to engage in and use. So things that you could consider in your states, or maybe again, you already have systems like this. First one is Code Red. So this is an emergency communication alert system. I know it's available nationally and we use it here in Rhode Island. I signed up for it, so anytime there's an impending thunderstorm or hurricane coming, I get an alert right to my phone and I know this is coming in, it's expected in this neighborhood at this time, this place, this is what to watch out for. So great system that we use. A lot of Rhode Islanders sign up for it, and we also use it in other ways to just send out mass notifications beyond just emergency ones as well. It's a really great system, so use it quite a bit. The Rhode Island Special Needs Emergency Registry, I'm actually going to go into that in more detail in a few minutes, but basically it's a registry for any Rhode Islanders of any age who might require additional assistance during an emergency. So I'll talk more about that because I want to get into that because I think that's a system that might be of more interest to the participants in today's call. And then United Way 211, you know, I think most states have something along these lines, but we work with them to make sure that they have the ability to provide confidential, you know, information referrals and have multiple languages available to serve all the various diverse populations of our state. So they're just another service that we encourage people to have and be aware of so they can call during an emergency and get some additional information. So going back to the Rhode Island Special Needs Emergency Registry. So this is a statewide registry that's actually managed by the Department of Health, and it's there, you know, primarily for emergency planning purposes, and it's there so that people can self-identify. You know, we don't sign people up without their permission. They go ahead and they self-identify as having either access or functional needs or chronic conditions for emergency purposes. So really importantly, that our 911 service in the state actually interfaces with RISNER. So that means if someone calls 911 from a phone number or an address that's active in RISNER, the Special Needs Emergency Registry, the enrollees, the person who's enrolled, their top 3 health issues will actually scan across the operator screen. And then this information will be relayed to the local dispatchers to assist when responding to the emergency. So if someone, say, has a, maybe, you know, recovering from a stroke and has communications issues, maybe when they call, they're not able to communicate with the operator so well. But if they were enrolled in RISNER, that would be popping up on the screen. So that operator would know, hey, I need to send someone out because they're not going to be able to communicate to me what's going on. So I need to get someone out there right now. Or it may flash that, you know, or maybe they get cut off or something along those lines. And it may say something like, hey, this person's reliant on special pieces of medical equipment. Oh, we might need to bring some backups for that or additional medication to address what they have going on in this emergency situation. So it's really, it's a fantastic system because it allows our first responders to know more about the people in their communities and respond accordingly. So who can enroll in RISNER? It's really anyone in the state can enroll. I don't happen to have a chronic health condition, but no one's going to stop me from enrolling. We really make it open to everyone. We encourage people to enroll, but really we're focusing on people with disabilities, chronic conditions, or access and functional needs. People can self-identify and register themselves, or, you know, with the permission of people, others can register for you. So a lot of times it's elderly individuals that we're encouraging to register and make sure that people know what they need. You know, a RISNER, someone who's enrolled in RISNER might be just fine day to day, but in an emergency, you know, they might need special assistance. So say there was a flooding or snowstorm, this is a list, is a great resource for, say, the local responders in a municipality to say, I can identify everyone in here who has a mobility issue and they can't evacuate. Say there was an evacuation order. I can quickly look through the RISNER list and know who in my community is going to need assistance in evacuation. Or I might need to know if there's a stay-at-home order, or if there is you know, a severe weather event that's impacting power. I know in my community who is reliant on medical equipment that might be in turn reliant on the power grid, and I might need to make plans to get out to them with a backup power source, generator, additional oxygen, whatever it may be. Again, knowing who's in your community and what they're dealing with will definitely help our first responders respond accordingly and faster. We do usually say that being in RISNER doesn't guarantee you're going to get personalized, you know, door-to-door service, right? We can't guarantee that, right? It's an emergency situation. There's a lot of things going on. However, does it give you a much better chance of being recognized and having your specific needs met? Most assuredly, because this really helps our first responders, whether it's, you know, firefighters, police, EMS crews, identify who's in the greatest need versus who might be able to help themselves, right? So really important. We do look to only really enroll people who live on their own or with caretakers who live in a group home. We don't usually enroll people who are living in nursing homes or assisted living residences, because those facilities obviously usually have access to all their residents and medical information and a robust staff on hand. And honestly, they're going to be talking with us at the Department of Health, and we're going to be assisting them during an emergency anyway. So that's kind of, we usually are looking for people who are at home and might need that additional assistance. And to get back to some of the points, I'm kind of jumped ahead here on my slides, but, you know, again, the primary purpose of RISNER is to identify those individuals who need assistance before, during, or after an emergency, plan for the needs. You know, it's great for a community who's making plans about how to react to a potential flooding situation or a snowstorm to know, hey, I have X number of individuals in my community who said that they have mobility issues, or I have X numbers of people in my community who rely on medical equipment, so they can factor that into their planning purpose. How are we going to assist those people, right? And again, like I said, we always stress people during the training, we're not guaranteeing anything. It's really important to understand that people understand this, but it does help people. It helps us plan to assist them, and can help us respond to the needs. So it keeps these individuals on the local responders' radar is really what it is. And it helps them prioritize whatever resources might be available during an emergency. So again, we simply can't guarantee service because they're in RISNER. And then, you know, the RISNER enrollment, this is actually the form right here just to show you what it looks like. People can do it in a paper form and send it into the Department of Health. I think I have a stack of them somewhere around here, some ones that we've already uploaded into the system. And or people can just go online and register. We find having the paper form available for people who might be less computer savvy definitely helps us out. And we make it available to all the municipalities in Rhode Island, all the local jurisdictions, so that they can get people signed up as well. And we really cross-promote it during a lot of our trainings and throughout the department, you know, whether it's the diabetes program or some of the other programs, the other Department of Health, we really work with them to help cross-promote this system so we can make those people aware of it as well. Important, obviously, we're talking about personal health information, so it's something you have to think about when you're doing a system like this is making sure that it's HIPAA compliant, and we assure people during the training it is, because people are obviously very concerned about their privacy. So we extend to people when we're for it that, hey, we're making sure that all our info is being kept completely private. We routinely go through and clean up the data. We do mailings to people on the list twice a year, and we deduplicate lists. Sometimes people sign up twice or 3 times, so we have to clean up the lists every so often. We also have to, you know, unfortunately check with the Center for Vital Records, because a lot of the people on the list are elderly, so some may pass away, and we do need to clean off the list so that the responders aren't looking for someone who may be deceased. And at any point, an enrollee or even a family member of someone who's enrolled can notify us and say, we would like to be removed, and we'll pull them off the list. And no questions asked. It is a completely voluntary registry. So some of the things we talk about with the municipalities who I work with regularly, so all the fire chiefs, police chiefs, people within the different jurisdictions in Rhode Island, we encourage them to, you know, use the RISNER list to do things like wellness checks, whether it's in person or over the phone. So some smaller municipalities around Island, we have some pretty small ones, as you might imagine, might call their RISNER enrollees, and sometimes larger municipalities will call a subsection, whether it's, you know, maybe people with specifically mobility issues. We actually had an event here in Rhode Island where RISNER became extremely valuable right overnight. Was that we had a gas outage in one of our communities, specifically Newport, Rhode Island. You may know about for the Newport Folk Festival. Something that's a little more famous here. But the first responders in Newport actually used the RISNER data to identify any of the community members with special healthcare needs. So using that list, they were actually able to go out during the gas outage and perform door-to-door checks with people to make sure that they are okay and provide additional support as needed. Some municipalities have, you know, transported people who were enrolled in the system to local shelters because they knew they were not mobile. They provided backup fuel for generators, probably more important, especially important in a, you know, a rural community, and have even replaced oxygen canisters to assist enrollees that are dependent on oxygen during a emergency. In one case, we actually even had a municipality put a generator on the back of a pickup truck and drive straight to their home, leaving the truck parked there to recharge their the medical equipment they needed, and the batteries that were there. So, you know, municipalities and local governments have found really great ways to use this list to their advantage and help their citizens. So, again, this is just some of the ways that we've used the list in the past. All right. Now, that's kind of stepping outside the general preparedness training we conduct with people, communities, things like that. We obviously push the RISNER list during that training. But now I want to step into talking a little bit more about how some various preparedness systems in Rhode Island that we've done helped us when it came to COVID-19. So before even the first case was confirmed in Rhode Island, again, we're lucky in Rhode Island, we're small, we have connections with every municipality, local jurisdiction in the state. So we, as the Department of Health, were able to engage with every other, you know, all the major state agencies, whether it was prisons, you know, transportation, whatever it may be, the local emergency managers, the municipal leaders, and stakeholders throughout the healthcare system, whether it's primary care providers, health, the hospital systems, to make sure that anything we could possibly do to prepare, whether it was stocking up on PPE or whatever it may be at that time. And God, it feels like a blur. I'm sure to all of you it does as well. You know, I went through it all and it still feels like a blur. I'm still trying to write it all down for our after action reports right now, to make sure that we had the chance to prepare as much as possible. You know, another thing that we did, and I know some states did, was that there was a lot of personal protective equipment purchased during H1N1. We actually kept all of that in Rhode Island. We had about $7 million worth of PPE equipment that we had purchased during H1N1, and we held on to it. We wouldn't let it go. Even though technically it ended up expiring, we actually worked with NIOSH, with the National Institute of Occupational Safety Hazards, to test the equipment to make sure that it was still good and still usable. And we found it passed all the NIOSH tests. So we actually dipped into this supply extremely heavily in the beginning of COVID-19, when, you know, all the supply chains around, you know, medical supplies and PPE really broke down in the country. So it was a huge resource for us, and it took, you know, the preparedness planning of my superiors to say, hey, we're not letting this stuff go. We're not throwing it out. We're going to hold it. We're going to make the investment to store it, because it's not cheap to store that much equipment, right? You need to set aside warehousing space and maintain it and do those checks and work with NIOSH to make sure that we are, you know, keeping the equipment in a good condition and usable condition. Is it the best to use stuff that's older? No. Is it much better than nothing? A hell of a lot better. I think we saw, you know, doctors using garbage bags as gowns and things like that during this pandemic. So again, whatever you can do to help prepare yourselves for these kind of eventualities, that much the better. Now, the medical emergency distribution system, that's actually my realm of things. These are specific plans we have with each municipality that we work on year in, year out to refine, update, train, and exercise. Exercise meaning actually making people pull it out and do exercises that involve different components of the plan to get people ready for mass dispensing of medical countermeasures. That could be vaccine. In fact, I was doing trainings before COVID-19 hit. I was actually in the process of doing trainings across the state to train people on basic training on how to work at a point of dispensing. So it's really funny that, you know, that really happened right as I was in the middle of training people. You know, even during the pandemic, I was still doing more trainings on getting volunteers and people ready to come and volunteer at our points of dispensing and help us working with getting the elderly in. At one point I had trained online via Zoom like this, over 1,000 people who were on a distribution list and were ready to go to help us step up and direct traffic and assist people in getting in, or help us with translations or whatever it may be, because we made that investment to make sure that we were you know, planning for the eventual vaccine dispensing, which thankfully came. And then, you know, we actually were able to use the RISNER list, again, just another use of it to identify those prioritized populations. I think most states prioritize certain populations to receive the vaccine first. So the RISNER list really was there because it, again, it included mostly elderly individuals, those with pre-existing conditions, so those are higher risk. So we were able to use that and to help our local jurisdictions identify those people who are at high risk and make sure they were aware of all the vaccine opportunities that we could give them and get them in. And again, building relationships and partnerships with our local stakeholders is just, it makes a world of difference. And that it only comes through hard work and spending a lot of time doing things that to them, sometimes we're pulling them along, right? Do we really need to do this annual exercise? Do we really need to do another training? Yeah, and we will give you some funding to do this training. It might be small amounts. We're talking, you know, a couple $1,000s in deliverables to get people to do a training or do an exercise with us. It makes these relationships so I know in each town who I can call to get certain things done because I've worked with them. I've done a training with them. I've done an exercise with them. And it allows them to contact the right people at the Department of Health instead of spinning their wheels talking to whoever else to get access to the resources we had available, whether that was PPE or, you know, at the beginning or later on helping identify certain groups for vaccinations. So that's just some of the other things that we talked about in regard to preparing for COVID-19. So with that, and again, I know I talk fast, I'm a New Englander, so I want to stop and actually take a time if anybody has any questions or comments. I'm very interested to hear if anybody has anything they'd like to add, and I just really want to open the floor and let people react or ask questions, whatever it may be.
Thanks, Travis. I know you got the no-source staff talking about an emergency pack for our animals. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, definitely. I have a perfect little kit for Archer. You better believe he's well taken care of. Archer being my dog. Sorry.
That was, yeah. No, that was a lot of great information. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Want to come off mute or put anything in the chat? That was a lot of great information. I know one thing most state offices usually ask is what's the starting point? If they're not doing any work in emergency preparedness, what would be a good starting point to get them off the ground on that?
You know, I think one of the first things, and we do here is, you know, and most states do this, and honestly, I would start with connecting to your emergency preparedness people. Most states have emergency preparedness people. Make that connection. Talk to them and ask them, hey, what are the threats or hazards? We do what's called a THIRA, which is a threat and hazard risk assessment. So most states do them, most jurisdictions do them. So they know what the biggest you know, threats are facing them. And then you can start by saying, hey, these are what I have to worry about. What can I do to start preparing? So if it is storms, then developing plans for getting people back up, you know, power or whatever it may be. If it is that your state experiences, you know, evacuations or your community's experienced evacuations for whatever reason, okay, how can I help support people? Is it making a designated map of evacuation routes and distributing that widely. So it really depends on the hazards you're facing. Someone in Alaska is going to be worrying about a lot different stuff than someone in Florida. So it's important to start, I think, with identifying what are the risks, what are the hazards, and then moving from there into developing a plan. But honestly, and I say this all the time, working in state government, steal, borrow, talk to your emergency preparedness people and ask them what they've done. A lot of times there's someone like me sitting there who's got a lot of the answers or some of the work already done for you. And all you need to do is incorporate that into your own plans and into your community and say, how can I extend this? How can I modify this to work for me? So yeah, I would start with, I think that's usually a pretty good starting point.
Great, thank you.
It is daunting, though, I can tell you, when you start thinking about making a plan. Each of our plans for the medical emergency distribution system, close to 100 pages per community, right? So it's a daunting thing. They've been developed over time, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It takes years of work to really take the time and think through all the different things, and they change and they update over time. So we follow the plan, do, study, act cycle. You create a plan, you try it out, you do it, right? So we try out a mass dispensing event, maybe it's an exercise one. We study what the results are, evaluate it, and then we act to change that plan. So, it's really about starting somewhere and getting a plan together and then testing it out and seeing how it goes. You really don't know until you try it out. And that's where exercises and people in the emergency preparedness field, I work with one of our exercise coordinators who just completed a drill for if there was a problem at a nuclear power plant nearby us in Connecticut, right? So they actually planned for what would happen if there was a breach at that nuclear field, and what would we be doing in Rhode Island. So they take that, they write up all the results and say, hey, we really didn't do well here. we didn't have any response to this, right? So what are we going to write in our plan for next time to make sure that we are able to do that? And that's okay. That's actually one of the best things that happens out of an exercise is you you just got to not be scared to find them and go looking for them. And yeah, taking that first step can be difficult. Definitely difficult.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I don't see any other comments or hand raised. So Travis, thank you so much for being here and probably staying late. I know on our time it's over after 6 o'clock already, so I appreciate it.
Happy to. I'll put my email up here in case anybody wants it. Feel free to take it down. I'll put it in the chat really quickly. If anybody wants to reach out or ask me any further follow-up questions, you think of something later on, happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you doing that. All right. Yeah, with that being said, thanks again, Travis. I really appreciate you coming in last second here. So thanks for being with the state offices today. I appreciate it.
Happy to.
All right.